Virginian heritage. Այո։
Ամբողջդանիկը։
Ո՞վ է ասիգա։
Վիվի։ Վիվի։
Վիվին է, Բարև Վիվի։ Վիվի գոչեն իրեն, Virginian Վիվի է։
Virginia, անոնը։
Virgin,
Վիվի գսենք։
Okay. Գագնգալենք։ Վազեցեք։
Շատ ավոր ժամանակ պիտի անցնենք։ Okay, խերով փարով եկեք անան գերեք։ Okay, that's moving, about 20 minutes, not too long. This is fantastic. Oh, I want to tell you. Panam, desnem,
Ասիմի գործաներ ասիգա, որտեղ ասիգա ես մասնավոր քեզի համար ռադ եմ։
Իդիապ մասնավոր շնեցի։
Անունդ կդեսնես կորս։
Դեսնելես պանալես առաջ քեզի մեկ հատ մաչիկ մտամ։ Շատ մերսի, Մարուշան։
Բոլորնի սալ ակին սիրելիները գործունեություն։
Այո։
Շտադի, բայց պիտի հանտի բինգիրեն։ Ես ոչ անգասկաց գիտեմ ալիգա։
Ես ալ գիտեմ, որ բոլորս նույն դեղը պիտի ելան։
Պիտի ելան και պիտի հանտի բինգ։
I can't wait.
Here, let me open this up for you. I put it together, I can dismantle it.
I have fingernails, I can do that.
I had a knife at the end.
Oh, you see now, there is a prepared.
Come to think of it, I have also a Swiss Army knife, which has been in my handbag for years and years. This, we can take it out now.
Yeah. Let me I made sure it's not going to be easy to.
I can't wait. An original by the artist Varuzhan Harabedian.
One of a kind.
One of a kind. Wow. Wow.
Is that a block cut?
I want to tune.
It's one of my engravings,
Hi, I want to tune.
Yes, you got it.
Armenian tradition.
Say it to me again.
Hi, I want to tune.
Means
Armenian tradition.
Tradition.
Yeah. Isn't it beautiful? It's original.
This is each one of these is done on a different paper.
Oh,
There's
right,
nothing duplicate.
Yeah.
Not that, but every one of these is a unique piece of work as far as engraving is concerned.
I know, right? Creative, huh? Much, of course, he probably didn't want to have to repeat it 3 times.
All right, this is video, so y'all can talk.
Oh, okay, all right.
Tell me something.
Yeah, and my son too.
These are my 2 cousins, Hopik or John, and Mimi Mary. We call her Mimi, and we call him Hopik.
Last time we met was just a little while ago, like 60 years ago.
Oh, okay, so y'all look the same then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We have actually seen him only like 3 times. I have seen him only 3 times before.
She came about 40 years ago to Aspen in our house.
Which was when I was 2 years old.
This is very exciting.
I was gone from 57 to 62 in Cyprus. Oh, not 62, 55 to Cyprus. Nakonya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing that blows my mind, that you guys went to Nakonya.
Well, when my mom asked my dad, "Do you want to send your son to Melkonian?" He said yes. That was it.
Fantastic.
And
See, I don't know those details.
And the only reason why I went to Melkonian is because my mother said, first your brother goes, he checks out the school, then if it's okay, then you go.
Now,
Well,
tell
I'm
me, which
older
years
than
were
him.
you in Melkonian?
61.
Oh my God, that was when I graduated pretty much from Oklahoma University.
Wow. Well,
I wasn't even born at that time.
Well, I was 2 years old.
Well, time doesn't wait for anybody. Let's put it that way.
sisters. They are the daughters of John Muhtarian and he is the first cousin of Barujan. We're all relating to Barujan in here. And that's Dylan. And this one is Remy.
Number two.
Kucağıma git bana gel. Birazdan. Arek birazdan.
Tamamyan.
Tamamyan. Erses tamamyan.
Հայկրականության ուսուցիչն է։ Բահրամ Մամյան։
Bahram Mavyanlar ha. İmadeni Salgar.
Սեբու Աբկարյանը քո ժամանակ։
Սեփու Աբգարյան,
Այո։
Գոհար
Իմ
Երջանիկը,
Çakupir ederim.
անցյալ տարի մած։
80 ամին 2014-ին մացա։
Այո,
Սեփ։
2014-ին։ Բայց
Եվ
հայտնի մեկն էր Սեփու։
Ինչպես։
Հայտնի մեկն էր։
Շատ, ես առաջին դարին որ եկա Մերկոնյան, ինքը իր թևին դագ արավ ինձ նկարչության առնչությամբ եւ վերջին հրադարագությունը որ Մերկոնյան սաներու միջոցով եղավ ադոր մեջի ին եւ իր հետ քաշված 9 նկարները 1949-ի նկարված պատկերները Անդեր Փանեգար, Սկապներու Փանեգար,
Դավաբայ։
Սկապարան էսեի։
I have to bring my sisters and I have to go like adopt them for
to come and participate for Mass. And after that, again, we will have a cultural event. I hope you will enjoy. Now let's pray. Let's pray and start our luncheon. I would like to use this opportunity also to say special thank you to our Eva. All of us together. This great. So let's say it. Let's pray in Armenian and then we will say in English. Hanunhor, Yevortvo, Yevortvuin Sırpı, Amen. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, Amen. Ortnesi եւ սրբեսի, զամենայն կերակուրս, զմպելիս եւ սեղանակիցս, ավամփոր, Yevortvo, Yevortvuin Sırpı, Amen. Let us in peace eat this meal which is provided to us by our Lord. Bless our Lord and His gifts. Amen. Bonapiti եւ բարիախորժակ. Բարի եկակ. In Armenian we say բարի եկակ. In English it means you are welcome. Բարի եկեք.
Okay, like I said, I think we are maybe 5 minutes from being able to eat, so let me go and make sure everything is ready, and then it's a serve yourself, grab and go.
John, go stop them.
And enjoy. We've got...
It's been so many years. It was kind of John.
Good, that was good. That's all right.
I'm not, but I wanted to come and visit and support your community and just say so many of our members are Armenian. I did not know that.
I don't know, honey.
Yeah, that does look like
Well, it's great to see you, Mary Margaret. Good to see you.
Thank you all so much for coming. This has been, what? This is as loud as it goes. I appreciate everybody coming. This has been fabulous and I'm really thrilled. If the most important part of this is the sharing of stories so that they're not lost to time. What I'd like to do is ask representatives from each of our Berkshire families to come and share stories. Let us I've been working with an Armenian genealogist for quite a few months to get us documented in his website. So I'm happy to show that to you if you have any interest. But in the meantime, what family would like to go first? The Harrisons possibly? Okay, well let's get the Cooneys up here. Come on, Jen.
Hello, everybody. I guess the best story to tell is of my maternal grandfather and grandmother. Can't hear me?
Yeah. Put it like that.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Is that too loud? I think the best and most appropriate story to tell is about my maternal grandmother and grandfather. My maternal grandmother was a Donegan, and her brother was Peter Donegan, and her sister was Anna Baronian, and Anna Baronian and Peter Donegan lived in Patterson. And so my maternal grandfather lived in Diyarbakir, Turkey. His father was an Armenian evangelical minister. He served a church in his homeland for about 15 years. He also had a business, and a Turk was his partner. So one day his partner came to him and told him what was coming and offered to buy him out and put the money in a foreign bank. And so that's what happened. So on the ship over to the United States, my grandfather met my maternal grandmother. And they landed in New York, and my grandfather went to Worcester, Massachusetts, and the other family came to the Houston area.
Calvin, they met on the ship?
They met on the ship.
Wow.
That's the story that I remember from my childhood. So no one told me this, but I think that my grandfather and grandmother had an understanding that they would wait for each other. So my grandfather went to Worcester with his family and got a job in, I think it was the American Steel and Wire Mill or something like that. And after a number of years, of course I'm sure they kept in contact, but they decided to be married.
Who's that? Go back one more. Can you go back?
No, oh, it doesn't, that's just showing pictures from where.
Anyway, they were married in Worcester by my grandfather's father, and theirs was the second Armenian marriage in the United States, reported by the Worcester Telegram. And that we're packing up because we have to go a little early, but we had that article on the table. The year. I'd have to look at the article again, but it was...
1902, I think. I just read it not that long ago.
no, it wasn't 1902. I think 1902, my great-grandfather, the Armenian minister, died. By the way, he helped to start the Church of the Martyrs in Worcester. And when Mrs. Kumi and I went, and Dorothy and I went back to Worcester to visit, one of our visits, we visited that church, and his name along with other ministers who had served that church. He was not the pastor of the church, but he served in various ways, not as a professional, but just as a minister. So that's the story that I remember, and the reason I tell you that story is because half of them, grew up, they worked here in the Brookshire area. And I think that the story I have is that my great-uncle Peter Donegan helped a lot of Armenians who immigrated to the United States. Maybe came in through Galveston, I don't know. But a lot of Armenians are settled in this area, as we can tell by this meeting. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Karen Agopian. The Takuhi Donegian Agopian was my grandmother. And I've been confused all my life because I didn't really know my name. Because it started as Nigahosian, and then my grandfather was Hagop and then it became Hagopian. And he died in 1903, I believe. My grandmother had two brothers here in Brookshire, Dr. Paul Donegan and Barton Donegan. They sent her tickets to come here, a widow with 6 children. I think they were aged probably 16 to, my dad was 8 and Peter was 3. He was 3, okay. Anyway, none of them spoke English. I love one of the stories my dad told me, that when they came through Ellis Island in New York, they were in New York, I guess in a hotel. My grandmother gave them 25 cents, said go out on the street, buy as much food as you can for this money. And so he and some of his brothers went, and they saw a vendor on the street with these big kind of curly looking things with, they thought, sugar on it. So they bought all they could for 25 cents. Well, they were pretzels. And he said, oh, we were so thirsty after eating those, we could hardly stand it. But anyway, they came by ship to Galveston. I think the brothers came to Galveston, brought them to Brookshire. Dr. Paul Donegan's house is across the street. He and Barton went to Corpus. I was born in Houston but lived in Brookshire till I was 3. And my dad did not talk about his life there very much. He did say he remembered going to the bath each week with his mother, and he had to go in the women's side because he was young. But I only have like 3 things from my grandparents. One, here we go, is the mortar and pestle that my grandmother hand carried here. I'm sure she ground all her herbs in it. And then this, my cousin Baruch, older brother, sent me this a year or so ago, and Baruch's grandmother, Miriam Negahosian, and my grandfather, Hagop Shawn, were brother and sister. So he's from that side of the family. But he was a tobacco agent, and this was his stamp that he had to use to show taxes had been paid. Barry had said that one of the traditions in the 19th century was trading back and forth between Jaffa and Constantinople. And as it said, as a result, he needed to pay duty or a tax to pass through customs at the border crossings or seaports. So anyway, that's kind of one of my treasures, but it's really fun to be here. to meet a lot of the children of people I knew years ago and see family resemblances. This one right here, Jeannie Barbarian, Carney. When we lived in Houston, and I've told a lot of you this story already, so you probably heard it. But on Friday nights, that was our night to get together with the Barbarians. And we had waffles and bacon, one week at our house, one week at theirs. And after dinner, the grown-ups played canasta. And Catherine, her older sister, and I played dolls and ignored Jeannie. And we even put her in the closet one time to get her out of our way. Anyway, we're glad you're here. I hope we get to do this again before another 30 years.
Lane and Rosemarie, would y'all want to come up and tell us about the Harrisons? Oh, come on. Rosemarie, come on. This is Lane Harrison. He would be a great-grandson of George Harrison.
Hi, my name is Lane Harrison. I'm from Houston. I'm a great-grandson of George Harrison and Rosa Bidgen. Their son, Sam George Harrison, was my grandfather, and my father was Stephen Lane Harrison Sr. I was a history major. I've always liked history. For the past 5 years, I've been working on a family tree on Ancestry.com. I've worked on the Harrison line a lot, and my cousin Rosemary Harrison, daughter of Leon Harrison, has helped me a great deal. I'm so glad she came here today. And my grandfather's brother was Harry, or Billy Harrison, was also a great source of information by way of a video interview. He did in 1987, which I still have. Also his wife, Catherine Kitty Harrison, was a wonderful person as well as a great record keeper who shared all her sources with me that Uncle Billy left behind. I'm especially interested in George Harrison's family and ancestors back in Armenia. And he came here at the age of 15 in 1889. I'm not going to get deep into the history, but I made efforts to find out about his ancestors, and so I've learned his parents' names, and his brother John Harrison made it over here in 1906. And John Harrison's granddaughter is an ancestry user. I found her, and she's also interested in genealogy. And I read a book about the Armenian genocide in Harput, and I realized it's very likely that George Harrison's parents were killed in the 1915 genocide. His conditions were very bad in Harput. George Harrison was born Kavort Garagian. There are Garagians in California. Yeah. Guregh. Okay. Gureghian. There are Gorigians in California. They spell it a little differently, like Goorigians, but I think that there's a relation. I made contact with some of them. One of them made a kind of a crude family tree with some information about George Harrison's ancestors, and I have a copy of that. Rosemary shared it with me. it's on my family tree. So if you're interested in further information about my materials, please come talk to me. I enjoy sharing information. We can exchange emails. I can invite you to my family tree. And also you can check out my book. I spent the past 3 years writing a book. Just got the first printed copies a month ago. And it's a nonfiction graphic novel, mostly about my fishing experiences, but also other interesting experiences. And Sam G. Harrison is in my book, and it covers a little bit of family history too. Thank you.
I'd like to share a little bit of information about George Harrison. He was a good man and a leader in this community. The information that I have about George is when he first came to this country, he was but a teenager. And he settled somehow in Waukegan, Illinois, and was working in Waukegan in a factory. He was befriended by his supervisor, who kind of took him under his wing and mentored him. One of the first things this mentor said was, "Son, you need to change your name and make it American." And that's how, what was it, Grigor Garegian became George Harrison. He was in Waukegan, and I guess Armenians had antenna out, and he heard about the Armenians in Brookshire. And he heard that there were marriageable Armenian women here. And so as soon as George could, he hightailed it to Brookshire, found him a good Armenian woman and married her, and produced 6 sons. And somewhere here I've got a picture right here of George and his sons. So that's just a by the by of the Harrison family.
And what was his last name
Garegian. Okie dokie. So who wants to? Come on, Jane.
Hi, my name is Jean Barbarian Carney. A little quite higher?
Right, don't put it too close because then it pops.
Okay. I'm Jean Barbarian Carney. I knew so much about my mother, Regine Shake Varsavarian, Barbarian, but I did not know anything about my father. I always told my children it was like Daddy popped from a mushroom because I did not know. So I truly want to thank Ava and Karen Agopian because she really had made this a special time for me. And if you saw those 2 tables, that was my family, because I've made it a command performance that they show up and come and learn about our history. And I truly, truly appreciate it because I got to meet other Harabedians. I got to see Joseph Hosepian that I hadn't seen since college days. It was unbelievable. But I want to tell you a little bit about my daddy because through a good friend of mine, I did some research through the United States government, and this project over here, this science fair project, is all about what I found out about my daddy. He actually, let's see, Mr. Harabedian was, from what I understand, this is all conjecture from what I understand through records, had come to Brookshire, and he was single, and he, I'm not sure, Donegan, Mr. and Mrs. Donegan were married in Brookshire, in Armenia, came to the United States, and he passed away in Brookshire several years later, and Harbedian, Mr. Harbedian married the widow Donegan. She passed away within 3 or 4 years. I don't know exactly what the years are, but eventually he corresponded with my father's mother. She had lost her husband, my grandfather, in Armenia. And so they corresponded. It was like a mail order bride situation where you send money over, you get to meet them. She arrived on October. Okay.
Okay, we're back on.
All right, thank you. According to records, she arrived through Laredo October 3rd, 1923, and they married October 4th, 1923. So it definitely was kind of a mail order situation. My father went to school for a year in Switzerland because he was like 15, 16 years old. And eventually, my daddy with his aunts arrived in New York in 1925. He was not accepted into the United States because of the quota. And so for 5 years, I don't know what my daddy did, but the next time, according to records, I found out about him was that he came in through Laredo, just like his mom had come in through Laredo, got through customs, quota, and came in 1930, 5 years later. What did he do for 5 years? I was talking to Ava, and she came up with some suggestions, but I wanted to find out. That's one of my key things, was to find out what my dad did in those 5 years. But so 1923 to 1934, when Mr. Harbedian passed away, they were married. And when Daddy came in, it was 1930, Mr. Harbedian passed away in 1934. So basically, Daddy knew him for about 4 years. So when he passed away, the property in the grocery store and the residence must have gone to my grandmother, and then from my grandmother to my father. But that was the basis for our life in Houston, because he eventually sold the property at the house, which I met the lady who bought the house here today, this evening, and Dot, I'm not sure her last name, if she's still here. But anyway, I just feel so close to everybody in that our connections that are because of Ava, because of we have Karen, who have worked to make sure that we are able to do all of this. I feel so strongly, and I wanted to have my children be here so that they could feel the history, because I'm full Armenian, but my daughter and my son are half Armenian, and now their grandkids, my grandkids, are fourth Armenian. It's getting diluted, and I just wanted to have our strong heritage still going on. Thank you for letting me talk.
The Brookshire Armenians were very, very special people. The first immigrants were the Donegans, who came in 1882 and settled in Fort Bend County, and then by 1884 they had moved to this area. As troubles in the old country progressed, more and more Armenians followed the Donegans, or Donegians. This area, I studied the census records from 1900, which is the earliest that's available, to document the arrivals. Brookshire was settled by Armenians, and you would see Armenians come and stay here a couple of years, learn English, make some money, and go to other parts of the country. A lot of Armenians from Brookshire went to Fresno. They founded Armenian churches in Fresno. You have others that went to Massachusetts. You have others that went to Glendale, California, and became leaders of their communities where they settled, but they started here. The Brookshire Armenians are known all over this country by other Armenian communities. We're recognized here by what we have contributed to the Armenian communities all over this country. So, just trying to let you know how special we are. Mary Margaret, would you like to get up and talk to us a bit? Oh, come on, Joe. Joe Josepian. And then we'll get Mary Margaret up here.
Hi, y'all. Can everybody hear me? Raise your hand if everybody can hear me. Great. Okay, my name is Joe Josepian, and I was born in Cairo, Egypt. And my grandmother, I got to tell you a story about my grandmother. My grandmother and my mother they were living in Diyarbakir. And when the Turkish army and all had a fight, they escaped from Armenia to Egypt. So they lived in Egypt, and then my grandmother decided to come to America. And she was going to meet someone in Havana, Cuba, and get married. So she came to Havana. Meanwhile, my step-grandfather, John Harrison, was living in Brookshire. He was in Havana to marry someone else. But of course, they knew each other. But the other partners didn't show up, so they got married. And they came to Brookshire. So my grandmother opened up a grocery store in Brookshire. And there was 8 grocery stores in Brookshire. So, and she decided that to have my mother and I come to visit in Brookshire, Texas, the United States. So in August of 1939, we came, well, I don't know if, I may talk a long time, but anyway, I'm going to tell you the whole story. Whether you'll like it or not, I'm going to tell you anyway. So we came by boat. There was another lady, Mary, and her daughter, and another lady. There was 5 of us. So America had just gotten out of depression, and my grandmother had to put up bond papers for us to come over, because the government of the United States was not responsible for anybody coming to the United States with visitors. So that ship landed in New York, and what happened was the post office lost the paperwork. And guess what happened? We had to go to Ellis Island with the rest of the refugees. 3 days in Ellis Island. Anyway, our cousins waiting on me. I was 11 years old. I spoke 4 different languages, not English at all. I spoke Armenian, French, Italian, and Arabic. The 2 hardest languages to learn is English and Arabic. But anyway, after 3 days, the paper came, so we headed for World's Fair, 1939 World's Fair. So then we came to Brookshire, at where the Astro building is, Union Station. That's where the train came in, right there. So we came here, and then Sam Harrison had a farm in Lake, not a farm, we visited there a while. And World War II broke out, and we could not go back. So we just stayed here, decided to stay here. But anyway, my grandmother had a grocery store. I got to tell you all this about this grocery store. During the war, Brenham Wholesale sold feed goods and canned goods and all that stuff. But as far as sausage, bologna, and salami, and all that stuff, we had to go to Houston, pick up all the stuff to do. So we'd go once a week. We'd go down there to Swift and Company, Armour Star, and Houston Packet, pick up lard, bologna, and sausage, and all that good stuff. Then we'd go to Randolph Brothers in Texas Avenue. We pick up all the medical stuff. Then we go to Pete Iron Steel Company, Heitman, and Baron Cortez, pick up all the nails and all that kind of stuff. And then we go to Cressy's on the basement. We buy coveralls, cotton sack material, and clothing, and coveralls and all. And then we come back with all this stuff. But anyway, we had a peanut parcher. Y'all know what the peanut parcher is? Now that you cook peanuts, you know. We had it was operated by gas, and I'd sit there and pump that thing for 55 minutes, 8.5 pounds of peanuts. And I read a comic book, and whenever I slowed down, my grandmother would punch me and said, "You're gonna burn those peanuts," you know, all that stuff. But anyway, Pito Harrison, my cousin, went to A&M, made my mother say that I was going to go to A&M, so I went to A&M. And meanwhile, when I was over there, I saw this electrical machine that made peanuts and all. I said, "Man, that's great. You don't have to cook it and everything." So I came back and told my grandmother, because the machine was getting broken because the gas was pouring out of it. But anyway, it was $300. It took me 3 months to convince her to buy that thing. Yeah, I know. But anyway, let's get back away from there. Let's get back when I came to Brookshire. When I came to Brookshire, they were working on the bridge on Highway 90, the blacktop stopped at Katy. Everything was dirt road. Brookshire was all dirt road and everything else. As soon as they finished the bridge, Brown Root came in, blacktopped the whole town of Brookshire and everything else. Meanwhile,
What was the name of the grocery store?
John Harrison. Yeah. And Wilpus Market was next door. You know. At that time, nobody sold chicken. You know, everybody raised chicken, you know, and all this stuff. And, you know, you kill it, dress it, and everything else. Until Weimer Feed Store finally decided to sell chicken, you know, so they would deliver it with ice and everything else, you know, that stuff. See, meat market, they sell chicken, all they sold was meat, and all that stuff. But anyway, as far as that goes, that's my story. That's it. That's all I know. Thank you.
Making her way up here, I thought I would mention to you that I have printed out the census records for the Brookshire-Pattison area, 1900, 1910, 20, 30, and 40. I've printed every page that has an Armenian on it. So if anybody would like to take a look at these, you're very welcome to.
Ava, would you tell them if anybody would want one of these copies? I made some extras if anybody wants to pick them up. This was in HEBU about the Armenians in Brookshire. I would like. Okay.
Okay.
All I can talk about is my grandmother, because I lived across the street from her, and I would go to her house.
How long did your grandma was?
Grandma, she was, I go, I would go to her house and steal some of her food, and she'd catch me, and she'd say, "Eshig, Shamakazis," but she didn't speak English, but I understood what she said. She called me Eshig, and that's bad. And she said, "You want to lick it?" I'm not gonna come. And I said, "Well, Grandma, I just got a little bit. Sus, go home." And that's about, the only other Armenian I knew was people would come, Armenians would come to see her, and she'd go in and open the door and say, "It's Megan."
How are you?
Let me see, I'm forgotten now, I'm nervous. Each business, they say, each business, they say, "Shana, I give to each business." Grandma said, That's all I know.
Well, tell something about Mama. Tell a story about it.
Well, when I be there in Armenian, I speak it.
Pretty good.
And of course, I did learn some, and I know we'd go shopping and she'd see something about somewhere a woman was dressed or something. She said, "This nigga." And because she didn't know, won't let her know I was talking about somebody. So she did speak to me in Armenian, but Grandma couldn't speak English, and I had to learn some Armenian. And that's all.
I might also mention that Mary Margaret recently did a DNA test for me to be submitted into the Armenian DNA project. She is fully Armenian on her mother's side, so we did a mitochondrial DNA, and she is submitted into the Armenian DNA project for study to build a base population of Armenians for further study for the future.
Ava, can you put that online so that other people who might want to do the same thing will know how to do it?
Sure, if you have questions, I'd be happy to show you.
Send it through the email, like that group email.
Okay, I can do that. It's very, very important that Armenians, that we have a base population, so we're not thrown into Middle East or Caucasus region, Caucasus Mountain. So I am very grateful to Mary Margaret for submitting her DNA to the project.
I have a quick thing to say.
I wanted to let everyone know that we're going to put the pictures and the video up online, and along with the link for the DNA project, we'll send you a link so you can download pictures or look at the video or whatever you'd like to do, and so that all that will be available to you in a couple weeks. Okay, Candela.
So this is just a little thing. We recently became members of St. Peter's United Methodist Church in Katy on Kingsland. And I was at a group meeting and met this woman next to me and who had brought this Middle Eastern food. So I said, "I'm half Armenian. I love Middle Eastern food. I make that too." And she goes, "So am I. I'm half Armenian." So her name was Mary Avakian Knowlton, her married name. And as we got to talking, I talked to my cousin Carol, who is Paul Kumi's daughter, who does a lot of genealogy. My father is Calvin Kumi. This is my sister Miriam Kumi-Rob. Anyway, so as we got to talking, it turns out, she goes, "Kuyumjian, that's very familiar. My uncle, Samuel Avakian, married a Rosa Kuyumjian, which is my grandfather's name, my father's name." And it turned out, this is totally amazing, that she is my first cousin once removed. That her aunt was my grandfather's sister, Rosa Kuyumjian. I mean, you never know when you talk to people what it's going to bring about. But that's just kind of a cool thing, and I invited her to come today, but her family was coming into town. So maybe next time. But they are from Fresno, the Fresno Armenians. Yes. So anyway, I just wanted to, you never know who you're related to.
Okay. This is so,
How much time do you have?
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting at the front table, anytime.
This is
As long as you speak
the
English.
a cousin that until a few months back I didn't know I had.
We didn't exist, right? Thank you, Eva. Can you hear me or is it too loud?
Very nice.
Well, I'm the newcomer. Yet I'm very old. I'm Varujan or Varush Ayrabedian. And about 6 months ago, my daughter, Adrene, who lives in Denver, I live in Aspen, said to me, why don't you do this DNA thing, ancestry stuff? I said, what do you do? No, just do that. So she gets me this package and put your spit in it and shake it up and send it over in some unknown place. I don't know where it went. Two months later, I get this email and they don't know what to make out of me. But they noticed that there is some uniformity in the DNA. So they must have done some research and so forth, and then came back with a 51% Caucasus. What the heck is Caucasus? You know, in our lingo, Kafkas is those mountains east of Turkey, north of Georgia, current Georgia, and so forth. And then, of course, you get the Soviet Union. And I'm saying 51%. Well, I know both my parents are Armenian, so my father escaped World War I by sheer skills. Twice he paid in lieu of fees to exempt from the Ottoman army. This is happening in Istanbul, or Constantinople, what we call now. And so 1915 comes in and Gallipoli, and any of you who know what Gallipoli is. And so the Turkish authorities says no more in lieu of, you know, funds to get away from the army. You have to go and serve. Of course, at that time, the genocide had just about started. And my father managed to escape one time. He had bought himself a uniform of the Turkish army. And that gives you an advantage. When you wear that uniform, it means you've been in the barracks, you've trained, and so forth and so on. So one day, as the gates of the barracks are open and this soldier, a new recruit, decides to go out, and the guard says to him, you can't go out, you know, you have to get ready for training. And my father, who had his uniform on, he says to the guys, don't you know all the rules? He says, you can't go out. So he sends him back and goes out and says to the guard, I'm going to take a leak outside. And he keeps going back to his house on the Sea of Marmara. Any ones of you who don't know what that is, it is the connection between the Bosphorus and the Aegean Sea. That little narrow called Çanakkale is where Gallipoli is. So anyway, my father goes, and finally, 1915, the war starts in earnest, and there was no way out. So my grandfather, who at that time they were trying to figure out what to do because the that at that time it was called bedel, B-E-D-E-L, in lieu of money, in lieu of not serving. He says to my father, I see a newspaper article here says, looking for skilled iron worker in the munitions factory. And my father says, you kidding? They can give the Armenians any job at this time? My grandfather says, well, what do you have to lose? Go and apply for it. So my father goes in. This is in Izmir, and ones of you who know where Izmir is, doesn't matter. The commandant of the munitions factory says, so you're applying for that position? My father says, yeah. He says, I'm pretty skilled. So he pulls out his drawer and gets a handgun. He gives it to my father, says, fix it. My father takes it apart, fixes it, finds out what it is, fixes it up, gives it back to the commandant, and the commandant says, well, you're going to be exempt from the military. And this is now 1915. The war goes on, as you all know, 1918, October 30. My father says, I went out the factory, I was standing in front, taking a break. And on the southern horizon, everybody was pointing on the southern part of the Marmara Sea. And they see a big black smoke on the horizon, real thick black smoke. My father says, I knew at that time that the war had just ended. This is October 1918. And he heard that the last train from Istanbul down to his town, which is Maltepe, was going to run the last train because as the Allied ships came up to the Bosporus, they stopped all transportation by military decree. So he says, I got out, went to the train station, knowing that that was the last train. I took the train, never came back. And that was the end of World War I. Then subsequently, between 1918 and 1919, when the Versailles Treaty was, he hung around, built a boat out of steel. I have pictures of it. I was just showing my cousin here. And they were shuttling the Allied troops between the battleships and R&R on shore for 5 years. Then when Ataturk came and the whole situation got worse for the Armenians, there was another mass migration out. This time, father decided he was not going to hang around. So he said goodbye to his father and his brother and his sister, and under a Greek passport, false Greek passport, he took a boat to Greece. And from Greece he came to Jerusalem, where married my mother, and I was born in Jerusalem. So that's one chapter, and the other chapter is too long. Who else wants to talk? And now, I was going to say, the DNA issue, and I'll tie the whole thing. I get this DNA, and it says Caucasus 51%, and what the heck is the other 50%? Who knows? Then, as the results start coming in, I open one of the DNAs and it says, you're 95% Armenian. Oh, okay, that's more like it. And then they enumerate something like 26 cousins by name. And guess who shows up? Ava. She's a very likely cousin. Meantime, I get this invitation during the same week.
Oh, that's funny.
The invitation for this thing.
Wow.
I said, what are the chances that Ava's name pops out as a very likely cousin?
Pretty cool.
And I think I'm going to stop here because there's too much stories there.
So what did your father and grandfather do? Were they in?
They were blacksmiths.
They were blacksmiths.
We come from a lineage of, who said all over?
Ah, you heard that, huh?
Wait, before you,
An Armenian lesson here. Hai means Armenian. So don't forget that.
H-Y-E, right?
H. Now, phonetically, H-I-G-H is the correct pronunciation. But we write it H-A-I with the 2 dots on it. That's a kind of a French grammar.
So hike, the word hike.
It comes from the word hike, which is one of the founders of the Armenian tribes, if you will. Yeah. So Hai Rabedia, Hai means Armenian. Now tomorrow, you're going to see a lot of Armenian engravings of mine in Armenian. If you're interested, I've set it up with Father Hagopian that all the profits of that are going to go to the Armenian church in Houston. Just so you know. So this is, Hai means Armenian. Hai Rabed. Is there something on the doubt? Me too. So where were we? Hi, Rabbi, yeah. Now I see yesterday, as Karen brought me here, we're driving down up the road here. There's a building, says Hai Rabedian on top. Have you ever seen that building? Is that you?
right there.
Wow, wow. Well, this is the correct, phonetically correct sound of how it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, because it's in English, it's correct. Sound is correct. We spell it slightly differently because when you put an I with 2 dots on it, that's equivalent to this sound. Anyway, where were we? Oh, so when this happened, I said to myself, if the DNA can pin Eva, and I heard that she's the organizer of this, and I think I'm going to go. My brother says to me, I can't go. He's 91 years old. And he says, you go. And then I called John, we call him Hobby, and his sister, Mary. These are the 2 here, my first cousins here. And I knew that he worked in Houston. So I sent him an email. No answer. I called my brothers and sisters and said, what's going on here? He says, well, you know, email. She gave me your email. And I found out, I sent him a long snail mail letter. I said, I sent you an email, did you get it? So he goes into his spam and finds my email. So he says, oh yeah, I got it. His grandfather, my grandfather, are the same person. His father is my uncle. And my mother is his father's sister. And that's Mary behind him. Same DNA, yes. Anyway, so I said, I better go to this thing here. And Karen, since I had known Karen before, Karen James, where is she? Karen, you didn't leave us, did you? Oh, okay. Karen is my second cousin. Her grandfather, my grandmothers were brother and sisters. I must be boring you, huh? That good food does it to you. Anyway, here I am. And I haven't seen John for 60 years.
How many?
60 years.
6-0?
Yeah, 60. The last time I saw him, I was headed out of Damascus. And he was living, their family was living in Damascus. And I took the ship and came to New York. And that was 1957. And 57, then I went to OU. And a little side, who's OU here? Hey, what years?
73 through 78.
Oh boy, you're a young buck. I was there 57 to 62.
Teresa, did you want to come up here and?
I don't know a lot of
Gregory, and your father is Bill. Okay.
Hi.
So my great, better? Yes. My great-grandmother is Some Agopian. She's in the big picture. They used to go down to Mexico, and I'm sure they had that one blown up and colorized and came back with a fancy frame. So she married Soren. She immigrated with Yaron and all of the brothers and sisters that you guys are all familiar with. And her oldest daughter, only daughter, was Alice Hovis. And Alice was lovely and very well educated, and she was the first female Phi Beta Kappa graduate out of Rice University when they first created, oh yeah, y'all can have Phi Beta Kappa too, you girls. So she wanted to be a doctor, but that wasn't an option for her. And when she graduated, her parents gave her a present, sent her off to the Sorbonne in Paris for a little while, and then took her around to meet the family because they had some relatives in Jerusalem who had to leave Jerusalem, so they were in Beirut at that point. So Alice goes and takes the grand European tour and comes around, and turns out they were trying to marry her off to Krikor, this older brother, who was also a doctor and well-to-do. But he had a mistress in Paris, and he was older, and he was like, nah, I don't need that girl. So Alice is there in Beirut, and with this family and her parents, but this family she didn't know, and the middle brother, Kerem, was her age, and so he took her around and toured her through all of Palestine, and sent her home with a picture book that was printed in Germany called Palestine in Pictures. And I have the book, and inside it he says, remember when we went to the blah, blah, blah, blah, blah, and we saw all of these people? Or this is where you met the sheikh, because she met a Bedouin sheikh at that point who asked for her hand in marriage, which she thought was hilarious. And he said, I have back of a picture where she's telling her friend, he said, you can't travel by yourself. In the Middle East, it's not safe for a woman, don't go. And she said, no, this is a totally different time for women. Of course I can travel and go do what I want. So I love that she felt so strong. So she comes back to the States with her family, and Kerem is a graduate of the American University of Beirut. He was an engineer. So he follows her much as Soren did to Somi, because Soren was a, what did Katha tell me? champagne and orange salesman in Jaffa and met Some when she was 16 and fell for her and followed her to Brookshire to marry her after she'd immigrated. So that's how those guys started. Yeah. So Some and Soren had Alice, Edward, Victor, and Edwin, who were twins. And he used to play games like, who am I really? Or they would go out with one girl and then the next date the other brother would go. Such a good family. So Karen immigrates to the States and begins to work for a firm called Oder and Edwards. Up again, sorry. And they discover while they're working that Mr. Oder is cheating and stealing from the company. So they get him out and it becomes Gregory Edwards, and that's a mechanical contracting firm that he ran and from 1946 till the present. So my dad works there, my brothers and I work there. And when World War II came around, my grandfather enlisted, and he had changed his name from Krikorian, which is like Gregorian chant, Krikorian, so he changed it from Krikorian to Gregory when he immigrated. And he was stationed in Lawton, Oklahoma, and he was scheduled to be shipped out like everybody else. But the commandants at that location had a fondness for champagne and steak, and his cooler kept going out. And my grandfather could fix the freezer and keep him in beer and champagne and steaks. So he didn't have to get shipped out, which was how he spent the war. So he had Alice and Catherine and my dad up in Oklahoma. So I think it was shortly after that when they came back, my Aunt Candy was born, and they all lived together in a house on North McGregor. Some, Soren, Alice and Greg, their 3 kids, and sometimes Victor and Adrian. I know, kind of goofy, McGregor and Gregory, yeah. Until I think my grandfather had a heart attack, and he was like, well, this is just too much stress living with you people. So he built a house for himself, and that's the house that I used to go to. And whenever anyone from the family would come into town, we would have a big family dinner every Sunday and spend our time playing backgammon and eating Middle Eastern food and goofing around. So I am grateful that I know what I do know about the family, and I'm very, very grateful to learn more about the family, and I'm very grateful to meet you cousins. That's really wonderful. Thank you very much. I did not.